Women make up 1/2 of the world's population. They perform 2/3 of the world's working hours. They own 1/10 of the world's wealth. They own 1/100th of the world's land. However, women, taken together with the children who depend on them, make up 2/3 of the world's starving population. This is according to Elizabeth Johnson in her 2012 book, Who She Is. The world has always been an unfair place, and for some people, like women, it is especially unfair. However, in the modern Western world, a lot has been done. Great strides have been made to close the wage gap between men and women and to make the world a better place to live. Recently, on April 8th, the Paycheck Fairness Act was failed in the American Senate for the third time. What I'm going to do is I am going to establish that there still is a significant wage gap problem within the American context. Then I'm going to discuss how the Paycheck Fairness Act will help to rectify the problem. And then finally, I will discuss some of the objections to the Paycheck Fairness Act, and I will seek to expose the frivolous political basis of those objections. According to the National Women's Law Center and an article that was recently published, How the Wage Gap Hurts Women and Families, from April 25th, 2014, for every dollar made by the average man in the United States, the average woman makes 73 cents in comparison. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but it really is. In the period of a year, a woman will lose $11,600 just for being a woman. Now, $11,600 annually is not just the difference between having a little extra spending money to enjoy your life. For a lot of people, that amount of money can make the difference between paying bills, having groceries, having gas to get to work, etc. And when you consider that over a 40-year period, the average woman will lose $464,320 just because she's a woman, establishes that there is still a lot of work to be done in the United States. And the figures are even more bleak for certain types of women. For example, African American women tend to make 63 cents on the dollar compared to the average man. And for Hispanic women, it's worse of all. They tend to make 54 cents on the dollar compared to every dollar made by a man. So obviously, the problem is still very much an epidemic. Education helps. You see, American women, when they are educated, the gap closes substantially, but it's still far from perfect. Christiane Colbert, in her October 2012 report for the American Association of University Women, states that when you control every variable, when you take a man and a woman who have been graduated from college for about a year, and you compare how they're doing, and you compare their wages, and you control for things like general disparities in wages among races, you control for different academic ability, you control for different GPA, you control for different number of hours worked, there is still, after you've controlled for everything and totally leveled the playing field, there's still a 7 or 8% difference in the wages earned among educated men and educated women. So even an education is not a fix-all for the problem. Equally qualified people, if they're a man and a woman, still will not be paid the same in the United States. So what does the Paycheck Fairness Act do to rectify the problem? The American Civil Liberties Union, who's been a major supporter of the bill, outlines some of the things that the bill works to fix. Right now, one of the biggest reasons that women suffer this type of injustice isn't because there's not laws in place to address the issue, There certainly are. The problem is most women don't know if they're being discriminated against by their job because there is an information blackout. You see, companies legally are allowed to make certain rules that say a woman or a man, either one, can not ask their colleagues what they make. And you can also be punished for disclosing your wage to another employee. So long as that system is in place, women will not be able to find out what they're making in comparison to their male colleagues. And if you can't find out what you're making next to the guy, in comparison to the guy next to you, then you'll never know if you're being discriminated against. So most of the women who are discriminated against don't even know it because they don't have access to the information they need to make that determination. And the Paycheck Fairness Act will correct that. Another thing that the bill will do is it will provide more oversight than what we already have. Companies that display a significant disparity in the wages they put out for men and for women will have to answer more questions. They'll have to show rather convincingly that the reason men in their company are making more than women is because of a difference in production output, or because of seniority, or because of hours worked, etc. There will simply, the oversight agencies will simply be given more authority to go in and investigate the problem, because as it is, nothing is magically fixing it. The system is not becoming more just by itself. There has to be some oversight. And these things, in addition to more traditional measures, tax incentives for companies that are fair, punitive actions for companies that are not. So if we all believe in fairness, and the bill is clearly designed to take real steps to make the economy a fair place, well then why has it failed in the Senate 3 times? Well, the first thing you have to understand is something that we all know very well. We live in a country where partisan politics are very bipolarized. And David Joachim, in his April 9th, 2014 article for the Huffington Post, documents the situation. Every Democrat supports this bill, and every Republican is against it. Now, I'm not a Democrat, and I'm not a Republican. That has nothing to do with why I support this bill. I don't have allegiance to either party because I don't believe that either party reflects my values as a Christian. However, when a party does something that is right, I'll support it. And in this case, the Paycheck Fairness Act is right. However, David discusses why Republicans are against it. One reason is they don't trust the motives of their Democratic peers. They believe that the reason Democrats are putting the bill forward is to hide the fact that in the last several years under the Obama administration, the economy has gotten worse for women. And they think that the reason the Democrats are putting the bill forward is to just cover that up and in sort of a political ploy. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't care. What does it take for us to support a bill that promotes fairness? Do we judge the bill based on the merits itself, or do we judge the bill based on the motivation of the people who support it? Now, I don't think that we should be psychoanalyzing every proponent of a bill to determine whether or not we want to pass the bill. We should pass the bill simply because it is good for the American ideal of justice and fairness, regardless of which party supports it and whether or not the proponents of the bill are idiots and you like them or dislike them or whatever. That should be a moot point, and unfortunately it's not. Another reason why so many politicians oppose the bill is because it will place stress on the economy, and it is true that it will place some stress. You see, because if a company is investigated and a man makes this much, as where a woman makes this much, the bill states that the company cannot compensate just simply by paying the man less, and now you pay the woman an unjust wage as usual, and you simply pay a man an unjust wage to balance it out. That will not be allowed. Instead, the man will retain his wage, and the company will simply have to pay more in wages to elevate the women who work for them. Obviously, that's going to create problems for some businesses, because money that would otherwise be capital to be invested in the company will now have to be paid in wages to create a fair situation for women. And for that reason, the bill is opposed, because it would place a certain amount of stress on companies. However, the alternative is to simply continue to have an unfair system, to concentrate all the financial burden on one demographic, just to simply have women continue to suffer this type of injustice because you don't want to inconvenience companies. It seems to me that it is much more moral to diffuse the burden throughout the economy. Companies and men and women should bear the burden of justice together, instead of simply saying, well, we don't want to burden companies any further, so we will allow women rather we will force women to continue to carry this burden on their own, because that's the way it's always been. And of course, doing the right thing would be hard. But doing the right thing is always hard. If it wasn't, more people would do the right thing. And so it's not, and so they don't. And obviously this problem will not fix itself. Everybody in the economy should do their part to carry the burden of justice. And so I simply do not buy that they should continue to suffer injustice because we don't want to place any burden on companies. That just simply is not a moral argument. So we've seen that the world is an unfair place, and the United States is still an unfair place for women, and the Paycheck Fairness Act would work to correct that. And we've also seen that objections to the bill are politically frivolous and even immoral. Equal pay for equal work, opportunities for every citizen regardless of their gender. That's what it looks like when you have injustice for all. And anything short of that is simply un-American.